Chapter 456. Lu Qing wins. The unfamiliar voice echoed in his ears. Lying on the ground, Ichii Sakata's mind went blank, forgetting to stand up. It was as though he had returned to his home, to the days he felt when he woke up every afternoon. I did my best and broke through the past, but I still lost the match. Lu Qing's shoes were undamaged. He didn't seem to have used his full strength at all. He was still at ease. When I was overtaken by Mukokuen, I comforted myself that running fast might not necessarily be a good one. The second half of the race was more important. When he had mastered the real wave, I was stuck at the same spot. I comforted myself that I was invincible below this level, I was the strongest and I would definitely be able to advance in the future. But now, facing a 20-year-old opponent of the same level, I lost so pathetically and powerlessly. What else could I use to comfort myself? Lu Qing withdrew his hand and coughed, waking Ichii Sakata up. Ichii Sakata stood up, his eyes full of confusion and frustration. With only a few Japanese words, Ichii Sakata couldn't communicate, so he didn't bother to say more. He cupped his hands and whispered in his mother tongue, "Thank you." Japanese samurai valued etiquette above all else. He couldn't embarrass his country in this aspect. Ichii Sakata returned the salute with a bow out of habit. He turned around and walked down the ring with hazy footsteps, completely ignoring the pain in his arms. He had used ninjutsu, back attack in a desperate situation, and his lower body was unsteady. Coupled with the recoil damage from the mutated version of severe warning, even though he had been able to block Lu Qing's consecutive kicks, he was still floating in the air. His arms were almost broken or cracked. Lu Qing wasn't interested in Ichii Sakata's journey or behind-the-scenes story. He even forgot to greet the audience and rushed down the stone steps to find the competition supervisor. After retrieving his wallet and phone, he unlocked the screen and sent a message to xianxia. "I won." At this moment, Peng Liyun, Renli, and In Chaoyang, who had raised their right hands to congratulate Lu Qing, withdrew them awkwardly. They pretended to look around and commented on the matches in the other arenas. Xianxia seemed to have been waiting. Soon she sent a surprised emoji. 3.5 minutes? Ichii Sakata lives up to his name. I'll be proud if you flatter me like this. Lu Qing smirked and sent a picture with an expression similar to his own. What Ku was implying was that those who could last more than 1 or 2 minutes against her were the best of the best among the 6th pin. Xianxia sent an emoji of covering her mouth and laughing. Please call me professional orange bragger. Alright, now we can focus on class." Lu Qing put away his phone and returned to the stands. He was in a good mood and gave Peng Liyun and Chaoyang, Renli, and Zhong Ningtao a high five. The expressions of my teammates are a bit strange. What's wrong?" Lu Qing asked in confusion. "Nothing." Peng Liyun's gaze continued to wander. And Chaoyang did not look sideways and focused on the song. Renli lowered her head and seriously studied the problem of how to bet. In the Longhu Club forum, Unparalleled Dragon King commented with a comical expression. I'm browsing the Japanese forums. It's so fun to read their comments. You know Japanese? Hurry up and translate it. Let me see how they flatter you." Eternal Nightfall, Yen Shaoling deliberately sent an emoji. "Let's wait." Brahmin quickly replied. After a while, Unparalleled Dragon King began to translate the comments one by one. Ichii Sakata has really become an ordinary person. Ichii Koen actually performed above his usual standards but still failed. He didn't stand a chance from the beginning to the end. Only when he unleashed the 7 Sins kill was a surprise and hope, but it didn't have any effect. Idiot. Why would idiots like Ishihara from the Martial Arts Association give 4 wildcards to China? That Lu Qing was already very famous last year. I've even seen his name here. I feel like he's a genius, even better than Mukokuen. I heard that China has many geniuses on the same level as him. All the contestants this time are of the same level. After all, it's an ancient country full of history. We can only look forward to Kaori-chan and Mukokuen. Kaori-chan is the best. Haha, the Japanese are quite cultured. They didn't show any sour expressions. Wonton Seller said, laughing with arms akimbo expression. Eternal Nightfall, Yen Shaoling played dumb and said, although I don't understand what they're saying, it still feels good. There's nothing happier than the defeat, praise and envy of the enemy. Little dragon, I'll leave the important task of translating such comments to you. Patting shoulder emoji, said Brahmin, excitedly. After browsing through the content of the livestream post, Lu Qing felt even better. He didn't appear again. After the first round of the double elimination competition ended, he and his teammates went straight back to the hotel. Standing in front of the window of the room on the top floor, he looked at the bright lights that symbolized human civilization and waited for the next round, full of ambition. Picking up his phone, Lu Qing shared his feelings with his wife. At the end of it he replied, "There's a prize for entering the top 16. Xianxia was in class and couldn't reply in time. Lu Qing waited for a while but didn't hear the special reminder. He unlocked the screen subconsciously and wanted to send another message. But after he finished typing he thought that sending too many messages would affect the girl's study, so he restrained himself and deleted the content he had written word by word. After washing up, Lu Qing turned off all the lights and lay on the bed in the quiet darkness, looking for something to do to pass the time. After seeing Fatty Jiang crying about being hungry for supper, he kindly sent the Xinxiang food map that he had stolen in the past few days to his best friend. "You're so mean. I've decided to go out and eat old Lu's barbecue. I'll take a picture for you later." "You're welcome." Jiang Fei sent a "come on, let's hurt each other" emoji. "Pinch the fat on your body and touch your bulging belly. Doesn't your conscience hurt?" Lu Qing scolded, "Besides, I'm going to sleep. I can't see what you sent." Manual smiley face emoji. While dealing a blow to Fatty Jiang, Xianxia replied to Fatty Jiang's previous message. "I'll wait for you to treat me to a big meal with the prize money. By the way, Empress Dowager will be back in China around the 14th of September. Okay." Lu Qing quickly changed the app and booked a flight to America on the 14th of September. He sent a screenshot to Xianxia. "I really want to tear up a dozen pages of the calendar." Xianxia said what was in her heart in a joking tone. After chatting for a while it was time for class and Lu Qing to go to bed. So they said good night to each other. The next morning he woke up on time and did all kinds of things step by step. When he was done he went to the training place and continued his hard training day after day. In his visualization a cold light burst out. It was crystal clear and shone dreamily, but it set off the boundless darkness, endless loneliness and extreme coldness without any heat. As the picture took shape, Lu Qing felt that the power of frost in his body was changing slightly. It was more illusory, more ethereal, more like a whirlpool that absorbed heat. This was the upgrade of the frost force to the ice spirit force. He had already found the way and was building a solid foundation. After practicing the ice spirit force for a while, Lu Qing took out the Emperor Yin diagram that had lost a lot of its charm. He focused his mind and tried to understand it, trying to picture that kind of concentration, that kind of heaviness, that kind of explosion and that kind of eruption in his mind. However, he was still a little short and couldn't visualize it successfully. "Looks like the Emperor Yin force is the highly condensed Zhurong force," Lu Qing thought. When his mind reached its limit, he turned to training his fists and legs. It was another day without any surprises. They practiced in the morning and rested in the afternoon. At night, they came to the Xinxiang Stadium to watch the second round of double elimination draw. Because it was only the first round, no one had lost 2 rounds. So there were still 36 contestants and 18 matches. This time Lu Qing's name was drawn early. Who will it be? I hope it's not a Japanese samurai. I need to experience more different martial arts, he thought to himself. A few seconds later the guest drew his opponent and shouted out the name, Miluo Vagar. Vagar? Lu Qing turned his head in shock and looked at the cold-looking man in the blue general uniform. He was looking at him with an expressionless face. His silver eyes were dark and flickering. "Damn, I'm going against the second seed in the second round of double elimination. It's really not a Japanese samurai?" Chapter 457. Vagar. In the live broadcast post of Longhu Club Forum, Unparalleled Dragon King, typed with a Nike mouth emoji. "This is getting interesting." Road to the Arena, replied with a smiley face emoji. "It's indeed interesting. He's right in front of the Inhuman stage, and it's the second round of the double elimination round where he doesn't have a strong desire to win. It's definitely a good experience for Lu Qing to have an intense clash with an expert of the Inhuman stage. That's enough. We don't need to worry about the outcome. Anyway, I don't think Lu Qing will win." Not necessarily. Lu Qing's physical fitness, mastery of moves and battle rhythm are all at the level of a top 6th pin fighter. Coupled with his powerful supernatural ability, it's not impossible for him to beat the newly promoted Inhuman Mighty One. A plumber eating mushrooms joined the discussion. But the chances are slim. Pig Riding Knight chimed in, "Vagar is very popular in the surrounding countries. If it weren't for his strong supernatural ability that interferes with the ability to sense the root pulp, he might have been able to step into the Inhuman stage 1 or 2 years earlier. I think that among the 4 contestants, only Peng Liyun has a higher chance of winning against him. Renli is still a bit off." Above the sky, the rock and roll girl said, I heard that Xinjiang, Miluo, and Nanjing haven't had professional competitions yet. Compared to our country, their martial artists should be lacking in battle experience, right? This is good for Lu Qing. Haha, sister-in-law, don't think that Xinjiang and Miluo don't have mature professional matches. Their fighters have plenty of opportunities for actual combat. Unparalleled Dragon King explained, their domestic situation is often unstable, and they are affected by the nearby war-torn areas. Their economic environment isn't good either. There are many bloody underground arenas, street fights, and even occasional local wars. Their life and death experience is much better than Lu Cheng and the others. Although Vagar is the son of a warlord and a future general, he likes to practice his martial arts on the battlefield the most. He trains his spirit through killing. As long as he doesn't die, he will definitely be a figure who dominates a region in the future. Sob, I'm getting nervous from your words. Brahmin sent 2 streams of tears gushing out like a fountain. Eternal Nightfall Yen Shaoling, who was secretly observing, chimed in. This is the first time I felt nervous since the end of the Nationals. So you're usually in a dead state, stupid Nightfall. When facing Yen Shaoling, Unparalleled Dragon King couldn't help but mock her. I'm angry. The baby was a little emotional. I'll forgive you if you go to the Lu Qing forum and post a live broadcast. Yen Shaoling wasn't stupid at all at this time. Sure, Schrodinger's tiger, little tiger, let's continue the live broadcast today. Although the match between Lu Qing and Vagar will definitely be broadcasted, you still have to take pictures for us on the spot. Unparalleled Dragon King gladly agreed and started looking for the little war reporter. My opponent is Vagar. Lu Qing didn't have the time to browse the forums, so he sent the results of the draw to Xianxia immediately. In the second round of double elimination, he actually encountered a strong opponent who was definitely in the top 4 of this competition. Xianxia woke up early as promised. She was not only practicing martial arts, but also concerned about her husband's competition. Soon she replied with a blank, looking at the sky and the wind. Vagar. Qing, I've realized that when you participate in the individual challenge tournament, your luck isn't very good. Lu Qing still had a way out, so he wasn't too nervous. Now that he had calmed down, he changed his mind and replied, maybe it's because I've spent my life's luck on certain things. Xianxia pursed her lips and smiled faintly. She turned her head to the side and paused for a few seconds before replying, You're getting better at talking. It's okay, you have your sister's good luck shining on you. At this point, she sent an emoji with her chin resting on her hands. Qing, I think it's time for you to attack first. Vagar was a representative figure of a national sect. Xianxia and Lu Qing had already discussed and analyzed him when they were chatting. Now there was no need for more words or elaboration. They went straight to the point. Yeah, we have the same idea. Lu Qing's body suddenly trembled. That was the eagerness to fight. The reason why Inhumans were called Inhumans was because they were close to monsters in all aspects. Lu Qing's current insane physical strength could only be said to not be at a disadvantage in front of mighty ones of this level. If he were to engage in a protracted battle or a battle of attrition, he wouldn't stand a chance. On the contrary, it would be easier for his opponent to suppress him by relying on his realm and strength advantage. The best way to win against a strong opponent like Vagar was to use the 3 axes of Qing Yaojin, to gain the upper hand and put his opponent at a disadvantage for a short period of time. Then he would seize the opportunity to find a way to win and end the battle quickly before his opponent could show his strength. Be it China, Japan, Miluo, Old Europe, or New America, all the martial arts combat systems were essentially the same at the critical junctures. For example, the Inhuman's root pulp would mutate to a certain extent due to cultivation, and the body would undergo a metamorphosis. As for how to cultivate, that would be up to each individual. Miluo, for example, blended the 2 martial arts philosophies of China and Polo. Under the influence of years of war, they developed a unique cultivation system. Through perverse polishing and tempering of the body, they would stimulate their potential and awaken the natural treasures of the human body. They would slowly guide the root pulp and gradually mutate. Xinjiang and Nanjing were similar. Therefore, if the martial artists of these countries couldn't reach the inhuman level, they would be miserable in middle age. Due to overdraft and old injuries, they would be tormented by illness and pain. Most of them wouldn't live past 50. If the environment was stable and the economy was good, there would be fewer people practicing such martial arts. Unless they were desperate, they wouldn't choose it. However, in Xinjiang, Miluo, and Nanjing the economy was poor, the situation was chaotic, and the unemployment rate was high. People who were so poor that they wouldn't live past 50 could be found everywhere. Given such an opportunity to change their fate, they would definitely grab it. Lu Cheng remembered a scholar who had studied such situations and published a book called The Influence of the Geographical Environment on the Martial Arts System. While he and Xianxia were discussing how to fight Vagar, Peng Liyun was drawn to face the 8th seed of the competition, a top-notch 6th pin with a strong psychic supernatural ability, Li Shaokong of Nanjing. Everyone's luck isn't so good today, Peng Liyun said with a smile as he played with his phone. While he was talking, Renli drew the Japanese fighters except for Kaori Karasawa, Muko Yamashita and Ichii Sakata. A few seconds after he finished, and Chaoyang was also drawn. His opponent was a strong fighter from Miluo who had the strength of a top-notch 6th pin. Lu Cheng looked deeply at Peng Liyun and nodded solemnly. No, it's just the two of us. After that they looked at each other and smiled. They weren't upset or angry. In fact, they couldn't wait to drag their opponent into the ring. Not long after, Lu Cheng's match against Vagar was about to begin as he had been drawn earlier. At this moment he saw the request from Unparalleled Dragon King. After thinking for a while he turned to Peng Liyun, Renli and Chaoyang. Can you help me take a picture later? Compared to Zhong Ningtao he trusted Peng Liyun and the rest more. This was probably the appreciation of martial artists. Huh. Renli and the rest were at a loss at first. Then they gave him a strange look as if to say, I didn't expect you to be like this. I've seen narcissistic people before but not this narcissistic. Lu Cheng blushed and quickly explained. A friend of mine is doing a live stream post for the King of Youth Pro League. He asked me to take a few pictures for the occasion. He doesn't know I'm Lu Cheng. I can't tell him I'm going to the competition. Wait a moment. Got it. Peng Liyun smiled leisurely. I have an account in the forum too. I'm also lurking. F***K? Lu Cheng immediately asked, what's your name? I mainly mingle in Shangqing sect in my own personal forum. You probably don't know me. I'm called Multi-String Trickster. Peng Liyun answered with interest. What about you guys? I only read and don't comment. I don't have an account. Renli was a little embarrassed. I'm afraid I can't help but quarrel with others. You know how to quarrel? Lu Cheng was shocked. Yeah, very good. Renli answered seriously. But the rest didn't quite believe her. And Chaoyang smiled. I don't pay much attention to the martial arts forum. Most of the time I'm reading books, looking for music, reading comments and writing. Writing? He's a literary hero of a generation. Don't offend him or he'll write about me as a weirdo. Lu Cheng complained in his mind and told them his nickname on the forum. My name is Schrodinger's Tiger. You guys can help me post a picture in the live post later. Schrodinger's Tiger? Multi-String Trickster. We're a good match. Peng Liyun joked. Without waiting for Lu Cheng to reply, he seemed to have touched something. His eyes started to lose focus and his thoughts drifted. Turning his gaze back to the arena, he sent a message to Xianxia. Snickering emoji, it's time for me to go on stage. How are you going to cheer me on today? Cheer me on? Xianxia deliberately blinked blankly, and immediately sent him a picture. It was a marriage certificate with their names written on it and their photos pasted on it. How is it? Are you motivated to see this? Xianxia said. Yeah. Nodding heavily expression, Lu Cheng replied. Fighting for the sake of his family. Lu Cheng unlocked his phone, switched to the live stream interface and passed it to Peng Liyun. He took a deep breath, left his seat and walked towards the arena. Opposite him, the tall and muscular Vagar suddenly stood up. Cheers filled the arena. The sound waves of Vagar suppressed all the restlessness. As a genius martial artist with a strong personality, he was also very popular in Xinjiang. Thump, thump, thump. His footsteps were heavy as he walked towards the stone steps majestically. He had a terrifying domineering aura. Lu Cheng didn't back down. His aura gradually grew. He was like a majestic white snow mountain that hadn't moved for thousands of years. The biting cold wind that surrounded him contained an intimidating aura of blood. Bam! Both of them stepped into the arena at the same time. When their eyes met, it was as if lightning flashed. Standing in his position, Lu Cheng closed his eyes. Bits and pieces of information about Vagar flashed through his mind. The supernatural ability of thunder and lightning. His martial arts were born from fighting, concise and practical. Good at using elbows and knees. Great strength and speed. Similar to the inhuman stage, what a formidable opponent. Therefore he had to start the fight first and gain the upper hand. Vagar was wearing a Miluo-style general hat. At this moment, he lowered the brim of the hat and used the shadow to cover half of his eyes, making the silver-white lightning in his pupils even more terrifying. Before long, the referee raised his right hand and swung it down. Begin. Just as he finished speaking, Lu Qing raised his hands and formed a seal. He said in a low voice, "All right. P.S. My previous updates were on time. Actually, I didn't save any chapters. Probably because I was in Japan, which was an hour faster than here. By the time I finished writing according to the usual procrastination pace, even though it was already 7 in the local area, it was only 6 in the country. Facepalm? For this trip I've brought back a few cuttlefish toys as gifts for everyone. I've started the lucky draw on the official WeChat account. Everyone leave a comment." Chapter 458. Alright. The deep ancient voice reverberated. Lu Qing dashed out in a white line, leaving afterimages behind. He was in front of his opponent at a shocking speed. Vagar was wearing a military cap. He lowered his body and stood with his left foot in front of him and his right foot behind him. He spread his arms apart and got into a boxing stance. At this moment he suddenly lowered his waist and leaped up like a spring. His majestic and burly body created a violent sound of wind as he fell down like Mount Tai. He bent his knees and directly hit Lu Qing's chest. The white knee pads at the back of his knees seemed to have turned into deadly weapons. Miluo's martial arts style was to master basic movements such as punches, elbows, kicks, knees and so on. They didn't care about complicated routines. They freely combined them in a way that was most suitable for actual combat. Continuous attacks were fierce and swift. In order to achieve the effect of defeating the enemy, the knees and elbows of the martial artists were trained in a special way. Vagar didn't move forward but instead retreated. He grasped the timing very well. He took a few steps forward and didn't give his opponent time to prepare a killer move. Once his knee was blocked, he would immediately smash his elbow, kick his calf, and follow up with a series of deadly attacks. It was impossible to guard against and block. Seeing that Lu Qing was about to crash into Vagar's knees and walk right into the trap, Lu Qing suddenly withdrew his qi and blood. His force, spirit, and forward momentum collapsed inward and concentrated in his lower abdomen. His high-speed running came to an abrupt halt. Lu Qing had been teammates with Lin Ke for a long time, and he often guided Xianxia in her practice. Naturally, he was familiar with their yin-yang twist and meteor blast. With the help of his little fairy and his own experience, he gradually found the knack of using force concentration and north wind footwork to imitate the ability to stop at will. Although it was definitely not as exquisite and marvelous as the original version, it could still be of some use at critical moments. Squeak. A sharp, ear-piercing sound of high-speed friction sounded. Lu Qing's position was one step behind Vagar's predicted position. It was this one step that caused Vagar's knee to weaken. When it reached him, it was no longer at its peak state. Boom. The force in Lu Qing's dantian erupted like a volcano. His muscles swelled and his body grew taller. The ground beneath his feet cracked open menacingly. He hurriedly swung his shoulders, his right fist clenched like a hammer in front of him, carrying a tremendous force as he struck out with a loud bang. Bam. He punched his opponent's knee, stirring up a strong wind that sent Vagar flying in midair. Crack. With a stomp of his feet, Lu Qing's body shot out like a bolt of lightning. In an instant he was right in front of Vagar. Forming a seal with both hands, he pointed at himself. In his mind, he sketched out an ancient character that would never admit defeat. Fight. Lu Qing let out a low roar. His eyes were bloodshot. He pushed his feet inward, twisted his knees backward, and tightened his waist. He channeled all his strength into his right arm. The martial arts shoes on his feet directly burst open, complementing the splashing stones. At the same time, his right arm swelled up and raised high. His fist covered the sky and the sun as it fell, making the airflow in the air abruptly produce a loud bang. Lu Qing gave it his all right from the start. He didn't hold back at all. Vagar had just regained his footing when he was faced with such a blow. He had no choice but to take it head-on. His face was as cold as ever. His big brimmed hat was lowered. His eyes shone brightly. His right fist was covered in a layer of lightning, as though he was wearing a loose thunder glove. Bam! His thick arms swung quickly. His fist was covered in lightning as he punched upwards. Bam! The two fists collided violently. Vagar's right arm seemed to tremble. His feet sank into the ground of the arena with a crack. He was a few centimeters shorter than before. With the fighting formula, Lu Qing was able to suppress this young mighty one who was almost at the inhuman stage and stop him in his tracks. Lu Qing was prepared. His right arm bounced back and his body swayed. He took a deep breath and gathered the numbness in his arm, his qi, blood, spirit, and force into his lower abdomen. He formed a human body Big Dan and stabilized himself in his previous position. With the eruption of Dan Qi, Lu Cheng's thigh swelled. He pulled out his left leg tightly and kicked towards the side of his opponent's knee. Vagar was slower by half a beat. He barely managed to lift his knee and swing his leg slightly. He hit Lu Cheng's instep squarely. With a dull thud, his body swayed forward. He saw Lu Cheng swinging his right arm and about to punch. Vagar didn't dare to underestimate Lu Cheng. He activated his potential and stabilized his center of gravity. His left fist was hooked to his waist. He was wearing a silver-white jumping glove. But at this moment, Lu Cheng's punch paused for a moment. His rhythm changed. When Vagar's heavy punch was about to hit him, he released the strength in his shoulder, shook his right arm and punched downwards. It was in this change of pace that he found the time to visualize the ice spirit holy light. He used the advantage to exchange for the opportunity to use severe warning. In the boundless darkness, everything was so lonely. There was not even a trace of heat. The crystal-clear and dreamy cold light seemed to be just an illusion. Soon after, thunderclouds appeared. Yin and yang collided, and the sound spread out, breaking all the frozen state. Boom! The sound of thunder was deafening. Lu Cheng's fist was covered in white frost and condensed into ice crystals. He smashed onto his opponent's electric glove. Crackle! Silver flew everywhere. Vagar stood there, stunned. His left hand from his fist to his arm was shrouded in mist and frost. His eyes lost their light for a moment, as though he had just walked out of a deep, frozen sleep. Lu Cheng, on the other hand, was thrown backward by his heavy punch and involuntarily took a step back. But while he was retreating, his right arm swung back and his left wrist flicked at the right time, throwing out a ball of glittering and translucent cold light, burning towards the enemy's face. His killer moves were in succession, leaving no gaps. The cold light flew and arrived in an instant. Vagar, who had just regained consciousness by relying on his tyrannical physical body, saw this unavoidable and unstoppable attack. His heart tightened and his aura suddenly erupted. A burst of dazzling light appeared all over his body, and with him as the core, electric snakes danced in all directions. Secret technique: thunder explosion. Bam! The ice was hit and turned into flowing light. Lu Cheng, however, had already stabilized his center of gravity. He pounced again, visualizing the dreamy and deadly ice spirit holy light in his mind. He knew clearly that although the internal explosion punch could hurt Vagar at his current level, it would be difficult for him, who had an inhuman body, to restrain the internal shock and affect his movements before the third strike. That way he would be suppressed very quickly and might not have the opportunity to use internal explosion. Therefore, when facing such a strong opponent, control was the priority. Severe warning was the best choice. Everything has its end, and so did thunder explosion. Lu Cheng deliberately slowed down his attack. He waited until the silver-white electric snakes that stretched out like hedgehogs dimmed. Then he took a step forward, lowered his waist and punched at Vagar's lower abdomen. His fist went straight forward and was quickly covered in a layer of white light. Vagar's eyes, hidden in the shadow of his large-brimmed hat, grew colder. He lowered his arm and waved it, forming the electric gloves. This was an inhuman whose root pulp had mutated. His every move was heavy and carried his own supernatural ability. He could release and retract it as he pleased. Just as he launched his electric fist, Lu Cheng suddenly clamped his tailbone and straightened his body. He raised his right arm to dodge the attack and launched a low kick with his left leg. In the snowy sky, coldness rises from the bottom of his feet. Bam! Sensing danger, Vagar dispersed the force of his punch. His terrifying right leg, half the size of Lu Cheng's, met force with force. At this moment, Lu Cheng swayed his center of gravity, arched his body forward, and stepped down with his left leg. In a flash he was behind Vagar. He raised his left arm like the omnipresent cold wind. The ice spirit holy light in his mind was broken by the tremors of the thundercloud. Boom! Everything was ready. He swung his fist down like a baton. Vagar had been at a disadvantage since the beginning and hadn't been able to turn the tables. Now that he hadn't retracted his right leg, the enemy's attack had landed him in a precarious situation. He couldn't help but feel angry and resentful. At this critical juncture, he let go of all his contempt and arrogance. He took a deep breath and fully activated the treasures of his body. Bzzzt bzzzt bzzzt. Rings of electric light surrounded his body. He bounced up on one leg, leaned back and spun into a terrifying drill. He collided head-on with Lu Cheng's left fist. Vagar's ultimate move, electric piercing. Bam! Amidst the dull thud, a bright light exploded, blinding most of the audience. They couldn't see clearly what was happening in the arena. There Vagar fell to the ground on one knee. His eyes were unfocused, and he had lost his general hat. Around him was a cloud of frost. Lu Cheng's hair stood on end, and his body was trembling violently. All he could see were silver snakes. He saw an opportunity, but he was so numb that he couldn't even use force concentration. In a breath, the two recovered at the same time. They rushed to each other and clashed again. Bam! Amidst the loud noise, Peng Liyun suddenly sighed. Lu Cheng really could have won just now. Renli and Xiaoyang had just recovered from the exciting battle. They nodded at his words. Alright, did you take a picture of Lu Cheng? An Xiaoyang recalled his teammate's reminder. Peng Liyun pondered for a moment before replying sincerely. I forgot. The three of them fell silent. Peng Liyun passed his unlocked phone to Renli and said seriously, You're the best at taking pictures. You do it? Okay. Renli, always confident, took the phone without hesitation. Chapter 459. Gotcha. Renli made some adjustments and took 3 photos of the arena. After looking at them with satisfaction, she posted them on the live stream thread to complete the request. After watching the battle for a while, she refreshed the post to see what others thought of her photography skills. Schrodinger's tiger, the photos are so blurry, said Unparalleled Dragon King. Okamoto's fan said with a funny face, Little tiger, are your hands shaking because you've been working too hard these few days? I can only tell based on the color of their clothes. Said Below the Sky. Renli's eyelids twitched. She couldn't help but reply with Lu Cheng's account. They're all moving at high speed. It's good enough that you can get this effect with your phone. There was nothing wrong with her explanation, but the exclamation mark at the end seemed a little unnecessary. Little tiger, are you in a bad mood today? Asked Wonton Seller weakly. I was wrong. I shouldn't have said that you've been working too hard. You're obviously not satisfied. Said Okamoto's fan who couldn't stop talking about dirty topics. You're the one who's not satisfied. Renli retorted without holding back. You're using disgusting as funny. There was a moment of silence in the live thread. No one replied for a full 10 seconds until Wonton Seller said, stunned expression. Little tiger, you've been hacked, haven't you? Why do I feel like I'm going to scold the whole world today? Renli took a deep look at her phone and quickly exited the forum. She locked her screen and continued to watch the battle as if nothing had happened. Previously, Lu Cheng had given it his all. He had utilized his secret techniques, unique skills, on-the-spot experience, and battle talent to the fullest. Only then was he able to complete the offensive and suppress his opponent. He had almost defeated Vagar in a short period of time. However, even though he had performed above his usual standards, the inhuman monster still managed to seize the opportunity to resist and escape from the desperate situation. He had pulled both parties back to the same starting line. Of course, after such a round of attacks, Lu Cheng could vaguely feel that his martial arts had improved to a certain extent. It wasn't referring to the specific realm of cultivation, but the level of actual combat. Bam! Vagar's right fist was wearing a silver-white thunder glove. His punch was so powerful that Lu Cheng had no choice but to block it with the outburst of his dance stage. He used force concentration to dispel the paralysis caused by the electric shock and took a step back to defend himself. Bam bam. Vagar's punches, elbows, kicks, and knees came one after another without any gaps. Like a tsunami of lightning, each wave higher than the previous, Lu Cheng was pressured to the point where he couldn't use the 9 words formula or prepare a simplified form of physical invulnerability. He could only use the 24 blizzard strikes to push the explosion of the dance stage to meet force with force. Bam bam. Every time Lu Cheng borrowed strength and was about to turn the situation around with 7 or 8 consecutive explosions, Vagar would always pause for half a beat and use thunder explosion or similar moves to interrupt Lu Cheng's build-up. Then he would return to his heavy punches and kicks, not giving his opponent time to prepare a killer move. Relying on the advantage of realm and strength, he slowly but surely wore down his opponent, slowly gaining an opportunity to win. This gave Lu Cheng almost no hope of turning the tables. He felt like he was in a situation where he was boiling a frog in warm water. He deeply experienced the horror of an inhuman expert. If there were no more accidents, he would lose for sure. This realization gradually emerged in his heart. However, he couldn't find a way to break free from the suppression. The enemy was too strong. The outcome seemed to be unchangeable. I can only take the risk. Lu Cheng made up his mind. His eyes were filled with determination. He held onto his chi and stamped his feet. His right arm swelled and he punched with a straight punch. Bam bam bam. Vagar's left fist, covered in a silver-white glove, punched out fiercely and collided with Lu Cheng's fist. Bam! With a muffled explosion, sparks flew. Lu Cheng's arm bounced back and his body swayed backward. Suddenly he straightened his back and flew backward. He didn't put on any airs and landed himself in a desperate situation. How could Vhagar let go of this opportunity? His thick and sturdy legs kicked, and his burly and majestic body gave chase. In an instant he was in front of Lu Cheng. He wanted to end the battle in 2 or 3 moves. His inhuman speed was like a top 6-pin fighter with the effect of the attainment formula. At this moment, Lu Cheng didn't try to regain his footing and put on airs again. Instead he took the opportunity to raise his hands and form a hand seal. In his mind, he outlined an ancient word that was filled with the smell of blood on the battlefield. He put himself in a desperate situation just to find a chance to use the 9 words formula. Put yourself in a situation of death and then come back to life. Army, Lu Cheng said in a low voice. His murderous aura almost materialized and pierced into Vhagar's head, evoking the fear hidden deep in his heart and the fear of death. Vhagar's movements slowed down. However, he was an inhuman mighty one who was often on the battlefield and tempered his mind by killing. He was only in a trance for a moment before regaining his senses. This prevented his opponent from following up with the severe warning. Lu Cheng's heart was like an ice mirror. He suppressed his frustration and gave up the chance to go for his opponent's heart. Swinging his back and bulging his muscles, he circled to the side of his opponent with the northern wind footwork. Boom! He broke through the airflow barrier in his high-speed movement and created a strong wind that blew towards his opponent's eyes. Dipper lifting dipper. Just as Vhagar squinted his eyes, Lu Cheng formed another hand seal and pointed to himself. He let out a low roar from his throat, fighting. His body suddenly grew taller and his muscles bulged. He looked like a heavenly soldier from the legends. His right fist became unusually heavy and was about to strike. It's really the fighting formula. Lu Cheng and Vhagar exchanged blows in a flash, so Peng Liyun couldn't be sure. Now that he heard it for the second time, he muttered to himself. Lu Cheng had already learned quite a few 9 words formulas. At the Japanese representative team, Muko Yamashita, who hadn't started his match yet, suddenly frowned. Facing the explosive fighting formula, Vhagar didn't dare to be careless. His eyes glowed silver and he leaned sideways. Circles of lightning snakes circled around him and spun rapidly towards his opponent. Exclusive unique skill, lightning piercing. But at this moment, Lu Cheng seemed to have been prepared. He straightened his back and dragged his right fist to dodge the attack, causing Vhagar's lightning piercing to hit the air and fly somewhere not far away. He had wasted a fighting formula in exchange for his opponent's unique skill to miss. In the sparring sessions a few days ago, Peng Liyun had dutifully imitated Vhagar's fighting style. This gave Lu Cheng a good understanding of this milieu mighty one. He clearly knew that after using lightning piercing or invincible thunder explosion, there would be a short pause and he wouldn't be able to unleash a chain of attacks. This was his chance. Gotcha. Lu Cheng stepped on the ground and his body shot forward like an arrow. In an instant he was close to his opponent. His left arm was covered in a thick layer of ice armor, blocking the front. His right hand was clenched into a fist, ready to strike. At the same time he outlined the crystal clear and dreamy ice spirit holy light in his mind, creating a darkness with almost no heat. He planned to deal a fatal blow to Vhagar, who was in the middle of a pause. Seeing that he couldn't dodge, had no strength to unleash his attacks, and would be defeated if he tried to block it head-on, Vhagar's eyes were filled with hatred. His silver eyes revealed a deep coldness. Suddenly he jumped up. He jumped high and landed his feet at an angle, stomping heavily on Lu Cheng's head. Good timing. Lu Cheng had already experienced this and was prepared. The thundercloud in his mind roared, breaking through the ice spirit. His bent knees and slightly arched back suddenly straightened and he flew up vertically. His right fist went straight up towards his opponent, who couldn't change his direction in midair. Skyrocket cannon. Head blow. If they were to exchange blows like this, Lu Cheng would at most bounce back and stagger. On the other hand, Vhagar's mind would definitely become rigid. In that case he would fall from the air like a stone and land heavily on the ground, giving Lu Cheng the perfect opportunity to win. At this moment, Vhagar twisted his back and crossed his legs, weaving a sizzling silver-white electric ball. It fell slowly like a bubble and hit Lu Cheng, who couldn't avoid it. Using the reverse momentum, he shifted his position in midair and moved away slightly. This was an immature move that he had never used in actual combat before. Bzzz. Clenching his fist, Lu Cheng, who was flying up into the air, brushed past Vhagar while his body was numb. He didn't manage to hit him. Bam. Vagar swung his elbow towards his opponent's chest. Lu Qing barely blocked with his left arm, which was protected by ice armor, but he was sent flying. With this exchange of blows, Vagar gained the momentum to land first. He bounced and dashed towards his opponent. As Lu Qing gathered his strength and unleashed his supernatural ability to throw a giant fireball, Vagar nimbly changed his direction and dodged it. Boom! Lu Qing's final move hit the arena, creating a strong explosion. Waves of red flames and violent shockwaves rolled out. Bam! Just as he was about to shift his position, Vagar caught up with him. He leaped up, turned into an electric drill and hit Lu Qing with a sizzling sound. Lu Qing blocked with his arms and saw a flash of light. He was paralyzed on the spot. When he regained consciousness, he smelled a burnt smell. His eyes reflected the figure of the referee raising his right hand. Vagar wins. The hoarse voice reverberated, and the entire Xinxiang Stadium erupted in excitement. P.S. It's nearing the Dragon Boat Festival, so I have to go to my mother-in-law's house. I'll be on my way in the afternoon. The second update is at midnight. I'll continue tomorrow. Chapter 460. Amidst the cheers of those who understood and those who didn't, Lu Qing took a deep breath and shook his aching arm. He came back to reality from his numb state and accepted his defeat. He felt that he should be happy. To be able to force Vagar, who had reached the inhuman stage more than a year ago, to the brink of defeat twice was definitely something to be proud of. He could leave with his head held high. However, he couldn't bring himself to be happy. His heart was filled with faint sighs and regrets. Just a little bit more, just a little bit more. There were no problems with my choice of tactics, judgment and improvisation. In fact, they could even be considered outstanding. But there was still a little bit of difference. I couldn't grasp the opportunity to win. Logic told him that this was already the best result. If he hadn't cautiously used the ice armor, his arm might have fractured in the last two heavy blows and he would have to bid farewell to the King of Youth Pro League early. However, Lu Qing was still unwilling to give up. He desperately wanted to make up for that little bit of difference. And now, the most practical and possible way was to grasp the essence and charm of the Emperor Yin diagram as soon as possible. He wanted to elevate the Zhurong force and begin the transformation of his body. Thoughts whirling in his head, he gave Vagar a post-match salute and turned to the edge. He walked down the stone steps and came before the match supervisor. Before he could speak, the supervisor took out his wallet and handed it back to him. Seeing the wallet alone, Lu Qing was stunned for a moment. He was about to send a message to Xianxia. Then he realized that his phone wasn't with him. He had given it to his teammates to take pictures. He shook his head and laughed. Keeping the wallet, he walked back to where Peng Liyun and the rest were, gradually recovering from the electric shock. In the arena, the majestic Vagar looked deeply at Lu Qing's retreating figure. He walked to the center of the arena and picked up the dusty and tattered general's hat. He flicked it a few times but didn't put it back on. He turned and left, not even lingering in the Xinxiang Stadium. Amazing Shikoku. On the Japanese's side, the samurais who were watching the match exclaimed in awe. Ichii Sakata's face was pale. He was even more shocked than when he lost to Lu Qing yesterday. He knew that the gap between them wasn't small, but he didn't expect it to be so big that it made him feel hopeless. In the battle just now, Lu Qing, who wasn't at the inhuman stage, had displayed strength close to the inhuman stage. There was a fundamental difference between them. How did he do it? He really hadn't advanced yet. Using arcana? I have some too. I used to be called a monster, but now I have to admit that some people are the real monsters. Muko Yamashita retracted his expression and turned to look at his fellow disciples. Yurangjin, if Lu Qing can reach this level at this stage, you can too. Don't be in a hurry to cultivate wave. Once you reach his current level, things will be much simpler. Yes. Ichii Sakata was touched, but his tone was not confident enough. Muko Yamashita raised his thick eyebrows and said in a deep voice, "Our extreme Hadu sect doesn't need cowards." Yes. Ichii Sakata shivered, his expression turning solemn. In the live stream thread of the Longhu Club forum, everyone had already forgotten about the small incident from before. Once again they were passionately discussing the battle between Vagar and Lu Qing. What a pity. Biting her handkerchief with tears in her eyes, Wonton Seller was the first to post. It is indeed a pity, I even thought that Lu Qing could win just now. Unparalleled Dragon King replied. In the future we will have to divide the realms further. Between the inhuman and normal dance stage and between the 5th pin and the 6th pin, there will be a separate category. This category will be called Lu Qing. Road to the Arena said, "Damn it, my understanding of the world was almost overturned by him. If it was someone who had just advanced to the inhuman stage, he might have really won. I feel that Lu Cheng is about to break through. Pig Riding Knight suggested a possibility seriously. How is that possible? Even a rocket wouldn't be that fast. A plumber eating mushrooms followed with a spitting expression. That's right, breaking through also needs to follow the fundamentals. Invincible Punch added. This guess was quickly drowned out. Brahmin said with a bouncing voice. I know that my idol has done well to achieve this level, but I was still gloomy and unhappy just now. But seeing you guys praise him, I'm happy again. Continue to praise me, I can take it. Eternal Nightfall, come and see. I saw it long ago. I was busy building and praying that Lu Cheng won't get an inhuman in the next round. Yan Shaoling took the time to reply. Somewhere in the stands, Lu Cheng walked towards Peng Liyun and high-fived him. I've always found Vagar an eyesore. I thought he looked pretty cool in a police cap. But now he doesn't have one, said Peng Liyun humorously, complimenting Lu Cheng tactfully. Sure enough, other than being in a daze and challenging others, the Great Devil King was just like the rumors. He was an easygoing and easy to get along with. Lu Cheng found Peng Liyun's words very down-to-earth and couldn't help but laugh. At this moment, and Chaoyang also high-fived him. Brilliant. Haha, I was so focused on your match that I forgot to take a picture. Take a picture. Lu Cheng thought of something and asked with a smile. So, you forgot to help me post? Nope, we still remember this. Ren Li is the best at taking pictures, so we passed the task to her. And Chaoyang, who had brought his own digital camera, answered without blushing at all. Hearing herself mentioned, Ren Li took a step forward and passed the phone to Lu Cheng. She nodded heavily. Someone was bad-mouthing you in the forum previously, so I helped you to scold them. Lu Cheng was confused. When he realized what might have happened, he suddenly had a bad feeling. He lowered his head, unlocked the screen, entered the forum, clicked on the live broadcast post and scrolled through the content. Thank you so much. The corners of his mouth twitched as he hurriedly replied, thank you. The person who spoke just now wasn't me. I wasn't hacked, but I felt that my photography skills weren't good enough, so I asked someone for help. I didn't expect her to help me post. Her? Little Tiger, did you ask your girlfriend for help? Wonton Seller followed with an I knew it emoji. So it's a girl, no wonder she's so sensitive, Unparalleled Dragon King suddenly realized. Girlfriend? Lu Cheng quickly denied, no, it's another friend. Another female friend? Tiger, not bad bringing another female friend on a trip. Okamoto's fan said in a rather flirtatious tone. You're thinking too much. There are other friends too, Lu Cheng emphasized. Okamoto's fan said with an angry smile emoji, you don't have to explain this, just tell me if she's pretty. If she's pretty, I don't mind being scolded by her. She's okay, Lu Cheng replied hesitantly. The conversation just now made him a little scared, not because he was afraid of anything, but because he had learned from those long-distance relationships that once two people were too far apart, their trust and sense of security would become fragile, and they couldn't withstand suspicion again and again. Therefore, if they wanted to go on steadily, both parties had to understand the word, avoid suspicion. Even if they had a clear conscience, they had to consider the possibility that they would do something untoward. Taking the initiative to stay away from things that would arouse their partner's suspicion and put them in a bad mood, so as to avoid arousing suspicion and causing trouble. A person's freedom is always relative, especially when you have a partner. Should I tell Ku about this? If I don't tell her, she probably won't know and this matter will pass quietly, but if she finds out about this on a whim, even if she doesn't say it, she should have some thoughts in her mind, thoughts churning. Lu Cheng quickly made a decision. He switched to the QQ interface and told Yanjika about his loss to Vagar. Yanjika replied with a hug emoji. I saw some of it just now and I thought you could win. Not bad, when you transform you will definitely win. She comforted her Cheng in this way. After a round of tender and encouraging words, Lu Cheng took the initiative to say, F***ck Peng Liyun got me into trouble. After sending this message he glanced at Peng Liyun and said in his heart, Comrade Liyun, the organization has decided, you'll take the blame. What's wrong with him? Yanjika replied with an emoji of a cat hugging a salted fish. Didn't Unparalleled Dragon King and the rest ask me to take photos for the live broadcast? Before I went to the competition I asked for Peng Liyun's help, but he didn't expect him to be so irresponsible and threw the responsibility to Renli. In the end, Renli quarreled with someone in the live broadcast thread, and I almost couldn't explain. Lu Cheng replied. They're so unreliable. Renli is usually so quiet, why would she quarrel with someone? Yanjika replied with an emoji of, I'm so scared that I dropped my dried fish. As Lu Cheng's competition was early today, it wasn't time for her class yet. She opened the forum and browsed through the live broadcast thread, and unconsciously bit her lip. I heard from Peng Liyun and in Chaoyang that Renli is especially good at insulting people online. Lu Cheng threw the blame to her. Quite a contrast. I feel a little cute. Covering mouth and laughing expression, Xianxia replied. What kind of person is Renli normally? This question made Lu Cheng feel a lot of pressure. He pondered for a while and organized his words. She's quite muddle-headed but very confident in everything. Because she's too bad with directions, the team leader has been following her, and didn't have much contact with us. I see. She's quite different from what I imagined her to be. Scratching chin with hand and rolling eyes expression, Xianxia replied. She exhaled, shook her head and laughed softly. She changed the topic and didn't continue to pester him. At this time she received another message from Huang Xiwen, her classmate who went abroad with her. Let's get together tonight? There's a ball at Tom's house. Many of our fellow villagers will come, and there will be famous seniors and seniors from our school. Xianxia didn't hesitate and replied directly, I don't really like crowded places. Seriously, what's the point of staying at home all the time? You don't even know a single classmate, how are you going to integrate into the class? You can't always be a loner, you'll be isolated. If anything happens in the future, you won't be able to find anyone to help you. Dress up properly, come and relax and adjust your mood. Huang Xiwen persuaded. I don't think there's any meaning in having a good relationship with my classmates. After Xianxia typed this sentence, she felt that it was too harsh, so she deleted and rewrote it. After she was done, she read it again and felt that her words were too soft, and her attitude wasn't clear and firm enough. So she deleted it again and typed again, I'm indeed a very boring person, I hate crowds and it's boring. But I like it very much. It allows me to study in peace. Don't inform me of similar gatherings in the future. I'm really not interested. After reading it a few times and making some changes, she clicked send, and felt relaxed. Really, my good intentions are taken for granted. Huang Xiwen looked at the message and put down her phone angrily. She said to the two guys in front of her, she's not coming. She's a very boring and gloomy person. Yes, the kind of old lady who doesn't know how to smile. In the Xinxiang Stadium, Peng Liyun noticed that Lu Cheng was looking at him. He touched his cheek doubtfully and said, What's wrong? Nothing. Lu Cheng replied with a smile. Comrade Liyun, you're a good scapegoat. Peng Liyun frowned slightly and shook his head. He decided not to continue the topic with this weird guy. At this moment, a match had ended. It was his turn to fight the seated player, Li Shaokong. Chapter 461. Li Shaokong was about 1.6 meters tall, skinny and had dark skin. He had the looks of a typical southern Jing person, except that he looked slightly older, not like he was in his early 20s. His eyes were dark and deep, as if they could drown in a person's heart. He had a strong psychic supernatural ability that allowed him to hypnotize his opponent during a match, disrupting his opponent's emotions and triggering fear and other negative feelings. He could achieve an effect similar to the army formula or the lion's roar. He didn't even need to visualize to complement it. He was a very dangerous fighter, as evidenced by the fact that he was the 8th seed of the tournament. After watching Peng Liyun leave for the arena, and Chaoyang took off his earphones and looked at Lu Cheng with interest. How do you think he will fight? Lu Cheng pondered for a moment and said, Psychic supernatural abilities are troublesome. If I were him, I would definitely use a move like thunder from a clear sky, cloudless thunder blade, at the start of the match. Shock followed by damage and paralysis. Haha, if I hadn't expected it, Li Shaokong wouldn't have been able to effectively avoid it. Then, without giving him a chance to use his psychic supernatural ability, I would have attacked and completely suppressed him. With Peng Liyun's strength, I would have finished the match in less than 10 seconds. That is indeed the best way to fight. And Chaoyang nodded in agreement. Then, as if recalling the past, he shook his head and laughed bitterly. But that wouldn't be Peng Liyun. He would definitely want to see the wonders of a combination of psychic supernatural ability and Southern Zhang's assassin-style martial arts. Hearing this, Lu Cheng suddenly remembered his first official fight with Peng Liyun. He sighed empathetically and said, Yes, that is what Peng Liyun would do. As he spoke, he turned to look at Chaoyang. Both of them laughed in unison. They were both people who had been tortured by the big devil. That can't be. Renli heard their discussion and rebutted with uncertainty. My impression of Peng Liyun had always been that he would give it his all. Lu Cheng and Chaoyang looked at each other again and replied in unison, You don't understand. Peng Liyun was not an evenly matched opponent. Although he seemed to be going all out, he obviously left some leeway in the choice of moves and changes of rhythm to fully mobilize the enemy, allowing him to play to his heart's content and satisfy his martial arts fanatic mentality. At this moment, Peng Liyun and Li Shaokong stepped into the arena and stood opposite each other. The referee waited for a while, then raised his right hand. Begin. As his voice echoed, Peng Liyun's waist sank and swung, and he floated out in the obvious shaking of the arena. In an instant, the distance between the two sides was shortened. Flash strike. As expected. Lu Qing and En Chaoyang looked at each other, sighing and amused at the same time. As expected, Peng Liyun did not use a move like thunder from a clear sky, cloudless thunder blade, at the beginning of the match. Boldness comes from skill. Compared to before the metamorphosis, the biggest difference between Peng Liyun now was that when the dance stage erupted, every move of his was imbued with the heavenly punishment force. Between his fists and feet, purple lightning curled up and sizzled, like a cluster of dragons. Even if Li Shaokong tried his best to counter, it was as if he was caught in waves of paralysis, each higher than the last, and it was very difficult for him to defend. During this process, he kept looking for openings to influence his opponent with his mental supernatural ability in an attempt to change the situation. However, every time he created an opportunity and saw hope, Peng Liyun would timely neutralize it before it succeeded. Time ticked by. Li Shaokong fully demonstrated his strengths and utilized his mental supernatural ability to the fullest. He felt that if it were any other situation or opponent, he would be able to make his opponent kneel down and admit defeat. However, the Chinese martial artist before him seemed to be at ease. His performance was unfathomable, as though no matter how hard he tried, he could neutralize it with ease. The more Li Shaokong fought, the more desperate he felt. He began to take risks, trying to force his opponent to his limits. However, the risks failed quickly and the plan was quickly ruined. The referee announced the results of the match. Peng Liyun wins. Very strong. At the Japanese representative's side, Muko Yamashita, who was focused on the center arena, suddenly heard a female voice exclaim. He turned his head and saw Kaori Karasawa, who had a solemn expression on her face. After that, Renli easily defeated her opponent, while En Chaoyang defeated his opponent with a clear advantage. The second round of the double elimination tournament was coming to an end. After tonight's matches, a total of 13 contestants had accumulated 2 losses and were eliminated. There were 23 contestants left vying for the final 16 spots. Only the top 16 contestants would get the prize money. The next morning, Lu Qing woke up on time. After a short chat with Yan Zhika, he eagerly began the day's training. He wanted to grasp the essence and charm of the Emperor Yin diagram as soon as possible and upgrade his Zhurong force in the shortest time possible. Holding the diagram, he immersed his mind and carefully comprehended it. However, the heavy suction and explosive flames interfered with his mind, causing his senses to be intermittent. He couldn't grasp the occasional flash of inspiration. Compared to the past few days, his understanding of the Emperor Yin diagram had improved a lot, but he was still lacking a little. Sensing the increasing impatience in his heart, Lu Qing retracted his mind and vision. He exhaled and visualized the ice mirror to calm his emotions. After another round of punching, he waited until his mind and body were calm before he stopped. He thought seriously for a while and decided to try to comprehend by analogy. This time he didn't look at the Emperor Yin diagram. Instead, he adjusted the state of his muscles, fascia, and organs according to the prairie fire diagram. Then he visualized the fire god Zhurong, who had the head of a beast and the body of a human standing on a red dragon. This allowed him to control the surging flames in his body. Since the Zhurong force could be upgraded to the Emperor Yin force, he should be able to gain some insight from this aspect as a guide. Based on his understanding of the Emperor Yin diagram, Lu Qing carefully controlled the Zhurong force and merged them together strand by strand. He pinched them together tightly in order to achieve maximum changes. After an unknown period of time, when the 2 streams of Zhurong power, which had become much denser than before, were slowly compressed by jianghu and squeezed into a ball, a strong suction force suddenly burst out from the core of the 2 streams of Zhurong power, which made the outer layer of the 2 streams of Zhurong power quickly condense inwards. Lu Qing's body trembled. The fire god Zhurong form in his mind almost collapsed. He controlled it with great difficulty and hurriedly released the mutated fire force. Boom! Flames rose in front of him. Smoke expanded and filled the air, scaring a few pedestrians in the distance into covering their heads and scurrying away, thinking that they were being attacked by terrorists. Seems like I'm getting some insight. Lu Qing couldn't hide his joy at the sight. A few minutes later, he heard the sirens of police cars and saw a squad of military police rushing in front of him. For a moment he was dumbfounded. After negotiating with the leader, Zhong Ningtao, and a call from the embassy, the military police gave Lu Qing a few reminders before finally retreating from the scene. Ahem. Be careful when you practice martial arts. After all, you're overseas. You have to be mindful of the consequences, Zhong Ningtao reminded him, both physically and mentally exhausted. He thought that Renli was the only troublesome one. He didn't expect that the most reliable and stable Lu Qing would also almost cause trouble. None of them are easy to deal with. Under the gazes of Peng Liyun, Renli, and En Chaoyang, who couldn't help but laugh, Lu Qing gave them a promise. He turned around and found a more secluded place. Using the little insight he had from before, he started to observe and understand the Emperor Yen diagram again. The dust accumulated and swirled into a vortex. When it reached a limit, it suddenly collapsed, squeezing out heat from the heaviness, igniting itself and spewing out flames that illuminated the darkness. Even with a guide, Lu Qing still experienced failure after failure before he barely grasped the subtle charm. The flames were controlled and turned into a crown and robe. In his mind, a solemn and dignified Emperor Yen statue was faintly formed. However, just as it was about to become clear, it suddenly collapsed. Lu Qing panted heavily. He wasn't annoyed but happy. Although he had failed just now, it meant that he really did have some insight. He had pushed open the door and found the right path. Now it was just a matter of patience. This was due to the catalysis of the change in method and also the accumulation of gains over time. Phew. He almost shouted out loud. He quickly took out his phone and reported the good news to his wife. I have some idea of the Emperor Yen force. I was almost arrested by the Xinjiang police because of this. Is it because you were too happy and shouted too loudly that you scared the little kids? Xianxia happened to be in between classes. She sent a kissing from afar emoji in surprise and delight. Brother Cheng, you're the best. Are you praising me for making a breakthrough in the Emperor Yen force or for scaring the little kids? Lu Qing snickered happily. Understand the spirit of your coach. Xianxia's dimples appeared at the corner of her mouth. She asked about the details, happy that Lu Qing had comprehended the Emperor Yen diagram and happy that he had accidentally attracted the police. For the rest of the day, Lu Qing didn't practice with Peng Liyun, Renli, and En Chaoyang. Using the excuse that he was about to make a breakthrough, he neglected sleep and forgot to eat to deeply understand the Emperor Yen diagram. When he was tired and resting, he chatted with Ku to ease his mood. At 3 in the afternoon, he sat cross-legged and finally outlined a solemn, dignified and scorching Emperor Yen statue in his mind. The flow of fire in his body surged, condensed and gradually stabilized. Lu Qing opened his eyes and smiled tiredly. He picked up his phone and sent a message to Xianxia. I did it. He had mastered the Emperor Yen diagram. The next step would be the sublimation process. It wouldn't take long. Only then did he feel sleepy. He hurriedly added to the girl, Ku, I'll send you a message. If I don't hear from you when you wake up, call me and wake me up. He felt that with his current condition he might not be able to wake up on time. If he missed the competition because he overslept and was disqualified, that would be a huge mistake. It was currently midnight in America. After sending the message, Lu Qing fell asleep immediately. His sleep was filled with dreams. It was dark and groggy. Suddenly he heard knocking on the door. He struggled out of his drowsiness and woke up. He picked up his phone and saw that it wasn't even 6 o'clock. Ku obviously hadn't woken up yet. Shaking his head, he walked to the door in his wrinkled clothes and opened it. Outside, Peng Liyun had one hand in his pocket. He didn't seem to be in a hurry. He smiled and said, The leader asked me to call you. We'll be gathering in 10 minutes. Okay. Lu Qing was still in a daze after waking up. Peng Liyun smiled and said, You're about to transform, aren't you? Yeah, you can try breaking through underwater. The results are pretty good. Thank you. Lu Qing smiled. He wouldn't tell him that his master had already warned him. After sending Peng Liyun off, he walked into the bathroom. He splashed his face with cold water and combed his hair. He felt his tiredness disappear completely and he felt refreshed. With a smile on his face, Lu Qing took out his phone and sent a message to Xianxia. I'm awake. I feel like I'm full of energy. After clicking send, he looked at himself in the mirror in high spirits and muttered silently, The third round of the competition, here I come. Chapter 462. After changing his clothes, Lu Qing was about to go out when he heard a special notification from his phone. He picked it up and saw a message from Xianxia. Xianxia sent an emoji of a monkey rubbing its eyes in pajamas. I set the alarm at this time, but you woke up by yourself. You woke up? Lu Qing broke into laughter and replied honestly. The leader asked Peng Liyun to knock on the door and wake me up. Hey Ko, why did you set the alarm now? Shouldn't you be sleeping soundly when I sent the message? I woke up in the middle of the night and looked at my phone in a daze. I also set the alarm. Xianxia sent an emoji of a monkey brushing its teeth. Come, let's interview you. Lu Qing, what do you want to say about finally visualizing the statue of Emperor Yan? Are you excited? Excited? What's your biggest feeling? Passing the microphone. Lu Qing examined himself and rubbed his discontented tummy. Laughing to tears expression, he said, my biggest feeling is hunger. I'm not joking. I didn't even eat breakfast or lunch. Xianxia laughed out loud and rolled on the bed. She sent an emoji of disdain. It's all your fault. I said I'd go back to sleep and make up for an hour of sleep. Now I'm completely awake from laughing. Without waiting for Lu Qing to reply, she sent another emoji of a pitiful face. I can only wake up early to train. Haha, that's good. Martial arts can't be neglected. The body is the capital of revolution. Lu Qing said casually. What he wanted to say was that only when the body was healthy, the spirit would be full, and it would be more conducive to learning. After a dozen seconds, Xianxia sent an emoji of knocking on the head. You're so dirty. Dirty? Lu Qing was stunned for a moment. He didn't understand what Xianxia was thinking. After thinking for a while, he understood and sent an emoji of a snicker. Ko, what are you thinking? What I mean is that the body is the capital of learning. Well, you're not wrong to understand it that way. Hee hee, your head. You're the one who led me astray. Yes, you must have deliberately misled me. Xianxia typed on the keyboard with a red face. Tell me, what do you want to eat now? I'll help you find the pictures right away. I don't hold grudges overnight. I want to eat our xianxia. Lu Qing changed his mind and his mood softened. Xianxia pursed her lips and looked away. She looked to the side and forgot what she had been thinking before. She said, then bring a cookbook when you come over in September. We can cook something together. Yes, yes. I promise to complete the task assigned by Coach Yan. Lu Qing replied. They chatted for a while. After Xianxia complimented him generously, Lu Qing took his belongings and left the room. He arrived at the lobby on time to meet with his teammates. Xianxia, who was in America, put down her phone and got out of bed quickly. She pushed open the door and headed for the bathroom to wash up. She had just turned on the light when she suddenly sensed something. Turning her head, she found her mother, Ji Mingyu, standing at the door of her room with her arms crossed, quietly looking at her. Mom, why are you up so early? Xianxia blurted out. Ji Mingyu chuckled, her posture unchanged. I was woken up by your alarm clock. Why did you wake up an hour earlier today? What did that brat Lu Qing do this time? Why did he have to make you wake up early? Xianxia's eyes suddenly lit up and sparkled. She raised her chin and said honestly, yes. Qing has mastered Emperor Yan force. It's going to transform soon. In the lobby, Lu Qing and Xiaoyang, who arrived first, saw Peng Liyun walking in leisurely and Rinli under the escort of the team leader. Zhong Ningtao was about to say something when he heard a loud rumbling sound. It sounded like someone's stomach was wriggling violently in protest. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Everyone present had good hearing. Rinli, Peng Liyun and Xiaoyang immediately looked at Lu Qing. Before Lu Qing could open his mouth and control himself, his stomach started growling again. I'm a little hungry, he said shamelessly with a red face. Oh no, I've made a fool of myself in front of the four of them. I can't build a reliable image anymore. Haha, let's go then. I found a good Chinese restaurant. Zhong Ningtao said with a smile. Peng Liyun looked at Lu Qing and smiled at Xiaoyang. I thought of a song. Me too. Xiaoyang downloaded the song quickly and played it through his headphones. So hungry, so hungry, so hungry, I'm really hungry. Amidst the music he looked at Lu Qing with a smile and asked, do you like it? Not at all. Lu Qing put on a forced smile and raised his right hand. He introduced solemnly, look at my fist, it's already clenched. Xiaoyang's personality was more feminine. Who knew when he would secretly trick someone? He was the most two-faced. Ah! Everyone burst into laughter. During this period of time, everyone had become more and more familiar with each other. During dinner, they restrained themselves and waited until Lu Qing was half full before letting loose. Although the food in the Chinese restaurant wasn't delicious, they still ate to their heart's content since they hadn't eaten Chinese food for many days. However, they were worried about the competition at night, so they had to make sure their bodies were in top condition. At 7:10 p.m., Lu Qing and the rest arrived at the Xinxiang Stadium. Along the way they witnessed a street fight and watched with interest for 5 minutes. At this time the audience had already gathered. The third round of drawing lots ceremony would begin in less than 20 minutes. Now that there were only 23 contestants left, the probability of drawing a strong opponent was obviously higher. Of course, there would be some lucky ones who would get a bye and watch the fights with a smile. In Lu Cheng's fan forum, Eternal Nightfall Yan Xiaoling was passionately pasting the wishing post. As long as Lu Cheng doesn't draw an inhuman in this round, I'll wake up on time from now until school reopens. She copied the content and prayed silently with Brahmin, all good names are taken by dogs, and the rest. If Lu Cheng lost another round he would be eliminated. Stupid Eternal Nightfall, why wake up on time and not early? Asked Unparalleled Dragon King, after observing for a while. Yan Xiaoling sent a shocked emoji and said, wake up on time means that you have to wake up at 12 noon. 12 noon? Do you still need to make a wish? God will strike you to death. No, you're too short and won't be an obvious target. Replied Unparalleled Dragon King with a shocked emoji. This is summer vacation, do you understand? Summer vacation. Uncle, you can't understand the state of a student during summer vacation. Although I set a rule for myself to wake up at noon, I've been sleeping when the sun rises and waking up at 4 or 5 p.m. Replied Yan Xiaoling. Damn, so decadent. Replied Unparalleled Dragon King with a sweaty emoji. Yan Xiaoling replied with a dejected emoji. It's very decadent, but it's really King satisfying. Little Nightfall, you're becoming more and more like an old hooligan, replied Brahmin. She used to be such a soft and cute girl. Ever since she started this forum, she had become an old hand in just a year's time. Lu Cheng chatted with his mother, Qi Fangyin, for a while. After reporting the day's events, he saw Yanjika send him a link. Laughing so hard, Xiaoling is so funny. Lu Cheng clicked on the link and entered his own forum. Seeing everyone's wishes, he was touched. At the same time, he couldn't help but laugh at Yan Xiaoling's waking up on time. Back in the days, I wasn't even this decadent during the summer vacation after college entrance examinations. At most, I would sleep at 3 p.m. and wake up at 12 p.m. Occasionally, I would stay up all night. He exited the post and switched back to the chat interface. He said to Yanjika with a smirk emoji, "Ko, it's almost time to draw lots. Aren't you going to make a wish and pray?" Yanjika sent an emoji of a little monster licking ice cream and said, "I'm not worried at all. With my luck shining on you, you definitely won't be able to draw an inhuman. Don't worry," patting on the shoulder earnestly. "Haha, you've learned a little of their chat style?" replied Lu Cheng with a chuckle. He turned to look at the guests walking up the ring. After eliminating Peng Liyun, Renli, and Chaoyang and myself, as well as Vagar and Sakata, something that I've fought before, there are still 17 choices left. If we don't count the walkover, the probability of getting an inhuman is 4 out of 17, less than a quarter. The probability of getting a seed is 7 out of 17, more than a third, almost half, as he would be eliminated if he lost one more round. He couldn't stay calm. Not long after, he heard his name and couldn't help but straighten his back. After waiting for a few seconds, the guest drew his opponent. Xingxiang Bako. Bako? Not a seeded player. Lu Cheng heaved a sigh of relief. This thought came to his mind. However, after thinking carefully about this name, he realized that it wasn't an easy opponent to deal with. Bako was one of the representatives of Xingxiang's martial arts. He also knew sorcery similar to the black magic voodoo, and his battle strength was close to the inhuman level. Based on his standards, he could have been the 7th or 8th seeded player. However, due to the unspoken rule of only having 2 seeded players in each of the 4 countries, due to Waku and Gusai, 6th seeded player, he was unfortunately not selected. He had to fight his way through to enter this round. After the start of this round, his luck wasn't too good. He drew the 1st seeded player, Kaori Karasawa, in the first round and swallowed the bitter taste of defeat. However, he won the 2nd round easily and kept his spot. Now he was in the same situation as Lu Cheng. There was no room for retreat. Luckily, as long as it wasn't an inhuman, Lu Cheng nodded without any arrogance or fear. He sent the situation to Yanjika and shared the information in the live stream thread as a little war reporter. At the Xingxiang representative's seat, Bako, with both his hands and wrists wrapped in blood-red bandages, nodded with confidence. Just as Lu Cheng lowered his head to look at his phone, and Chaoyang was also drawn. His opponent was quickly confirmed. Nanjing Banam. 4th seeded Banam. Chapter 463. This luck. And Chaoyang was stunned at first when he heard the result of the draw. Then he shook his head and laughed at himself. He was relatively relaxed and didn't feel much pressure. Instead, he was eager to try. To him, he hadn't lost a single match yet. Even if he lost this match, he wouldn't be eliminated. It would be a great experience to have an intense battle with an inhuman mighty one with different martial arts styles. Just look at Lu Cheng from yesterday. After fighting with Vagar, his actual combat skills seemed to have reached a new level, solidifying the weak foundation caused by his rapid advancement. Seeing that En Chaoyang didn't care much about the bad draw, Lu Cheng immediately joked, "I think this is retribution for provoking me with the Song of Eating." Under En Chaoyang's amused and angry expression, he explained seriously, "As you know, I have the supernatural ability to reflect curses and bad luck. This is just the most basic application of it. Those who hurt me, provoke me, or make fun of me will suffer retribution." At this point, he drew a cross in the wrong order on his chest and said solemnly, "Believe in Lu Cheng and you will live forever." And Chaoyang was stunned for a few seconds. He couldn't help but laugh. "If you didn't say that last sentence, I would have believed you." As he spoke, he couldn't continue and laughed with Peng Liyun, Renli, and Zhong Ningtao. "You believed me just like that? Using Little Ming's catchphrase, 'With your intelligence, if you were a girl, I could have tricked you into bed twice.'" Lu Cheng secretly mocked him and laughed with everyone else. "You seem to be in a good mood?" And Chaoyang calmed down and fixed his half-length artistic hair. He glanced at Lu Cheng and said, "Yeah." Lu Cheng replied with a smile, feeling good both physically and mentally. He had succeeded in his training and was about to transform. His opponent wasn't a real inhuman mighty one. What was there to be unsatisfied about? At this moment, Xianxia replied to his previous message. Hand under chin, laughing expression, "See? I told you that with my luck shining on you, you wouldn't be able to get an inhuman. Now I'm completely at ease. I won't cheer you on later. I'll lend you my luck." "Completely at ease? Completely? Cuckoo, you seem to have exposed something." Lu Cheng couldn't help but laugh. His mood was getting better. At this moment, Peng Liyun was selected. His opponent was a Japanese samurai, neither Kaori Karasawa nor Muko Yamashita. Behind him there were only two groups left. After confirming, there was a lucky girl who got a bye, student Renli. Is it because girls with bad sense of direction tend to have better luck? Lu Cheng whispered into En Chaoyang's ear. "It's possible. If you're unlucky, you'll really get lost," and Chaoyang replied tactfully. The two of them turned their heads and saw Renli puffing out her cheeks, looking very dissatisfied. "What is she unhappy about?" And Chaoyang asked in a low voice. Lu Cheng thought for a moment and said, "Maybe he's disappointed that there wasn't a fight." After saying that, the two of them looked at each other and sympathized with the pitiful vacant lot. In Lu Cheng's fan forum, Eternal Nightfall Yen Shaoling tagged Unparalleled Dragon King. "Is this Bako powerful? What level? How much worse is he compared to our Lu Cheng?" "Close to the inhuman stage." Unparalleled Dragon King replied honestly, "But most of his strength is in Nanyang sorcery. The most powerful curse type is coincidentally countered by Lu Cheng. It's fine if he doesn't use it, but if he does, he'll just have to wait for a comedy. So, in conclusion, he's slightly weaker than Lu Cheng. Based on Lu Cheng's outstanding performance on the spot, Bako doesn't have a high chance of winning. Our wishes are still very effective." Dancing in circles expression, Yen Shaoling said. Okamoto's fan appeared and said, "Then you'll have to start waking up on time." Yen Shaoling immediately went down on her knees and shivered. "Don't worry, I'll keep an eye on you." Patting shoulder expression, replied Brahmin. When the duel was about to start at the Xinjiang representative's seat, the sallow skinny Theravada ascetic monk Waku walked up to Bako and said with perfect articulation, "You have to be careful of his supernatural ability to reflect curses." Bako adjusted the blood-red bandages on his hands and replied with a hoarse voice, "I've seen his information before. As a famous boxer in Xinjiang, he looked skinny. In fact, every muscle on his body seemed to be made of copper and iron, containing explosive strength. His eyebrows were short and thick and the edges were folded. He looked extremely fierce." After answering the reminder and adjusting the bandages, Bako stood up slowly, extended his hands and spread them in front of Waku. He said confidently, "My sorcery isn't limited to curses." As he spoke, there seemed to be many tiny life forms under his blood-red bandages. They were densely packed and wriggling, making one's heart palpitate. Bam! Cracking his knuckles, Bako clenched his fist tightly. He took a step forward, past Waku and walked towards the arena. Lu Cheng was already waiting at the edge of the arena. When other people's duels ended, he couldn't wait to enter the arena and stand at his position. His mood was as good as before. For the first time he didn't unleash his aura and visualize the army formula to exert pressure on Bako, who was walking towards him slowly. He was rather relaxed and at ease. Yes, once the Emperor Yin statue was formed, it meant that the Zhurong force would be upgraded very soon. He would officially cross the threshold and begin to transform, becoming an inhuman. This was extremely symbolic. It was similar to achieving the Dan stage through force concentration. It meant that he could truly be called a mighty one and belong to the upper echelons of the martial arts world. At this stage, even if he lost the competition and didn't get the prize money, Wu Qinggue would increase his endorsement fees according to the contract when he returned to China. Furthermore, the reward for winning the national championship would also be settled together. This was the worst-case scenario. However, in reality, Bako wasn't an inhuman. He had a high chance of winning. He would still value him, but he wouldn't feel too much pressure and his mood wouldn't be affected. Moreover, the flight to America had been successfully booked. Ko had specially woken up early today to wake him up. His mother had said that the new house they bought had increased by 50,000 yuan in just a few months. His relationship with his teammates was getting better. Everything in the world seemed so perfect. Lu Qing thought happily. He didn't even waste the waiting time and took the time to visualize. In his mind, he outlined the heavy, majestic, scorching and terrifying Emperor Yin statue. With this, he guided the flame force in his body to slowly condense and transform. This was the process of upgrading Zhurong force to Emperor Yin force. Actually, even without this upgrade, he who had grasped the Emperor Yin diagram could use the Emperor Yin force through a series of steps and visualizations. However, as he had to compress it at the last minute and visualize it for a few seconds, it was almost useless in actual combat. When the flame force corresponded to the upgrade, he could save those few seconds and allow the Emperor Yin force to be used in actual combat. If his root pulp mutated and his body transformed, he wouldn't even need a series of steps. He could just visualize the Emperor force. Wisps of flames fused and streaks of red turned white. Lu Qing enjoyed the changes in his body and gradually accumulated a streak of Emperor Yin force. With this as the core, he triggered others and created more. At this moment, Bako walked up to the arena. He saw the young man standing casually in front of him and realized that he was smiling. He didn't show any fighting spirit and was relaxed both physically and mentally. Too arrogant, too careless. Bako thought as the fighting spirit in his eyes burned brighter. At this moment, Lu Qing miraculously felt no pressure. He felt that he had the lively mind described in xianxia novels. As a result, his flame force became lively. He didn't care about his opponent's performance. He smiled at Bako and bowed. The referee raised his right hand and shouted in a deep and loud voice, "Begin!" Experiencing the miraculous feeling, Lu Qing, who was relaxed physically and mentally, took a step forward with his left leg. His mind naturally changed his visualization and the attainment formula appeared. In the deep ancient sound, he covered more than 10 meters with a single stride. With a swoosh, he was right in front of Bako. Swinging his right arm, his fist mixed with the forward momentum of his body and punched out with a bang. It was accompanied by the violent flame force that was caused by the disappearance of the Emperor Yin statue midway. Bako was shocked. Seeing that he couldn't dodge in time, he quickly lowered his center of gravity and put his hands in front of him to block. Lu Qing's fist was like lightning. It was dyed with a layer of blazing white as it hit his hand. Boom. In the midst of the explosion, waves of fire rolled and billowed. Strong winds overflowed in all directions. Bakashin could not help but take a step back. To his astonishment, he saw that the blood-colored bandage on his hand was either charred black or burning. Tiny things fell off and turned into dust along with the wind. Bako's pupils contracted. When did Lu Qing's flame force become so powerful? P.S. Only one more chapter to go. Continue tomorrow. Chapter 464. On the spectator stand, and Chaoyang was holding Lu Qing's phone. According to his instructions, he would occasionally take a picture and post it on the live stream post. He would also add a sentence of commentary to describe the progress for Unparalleled Dragon King, Eternal Nightfall and the rest who couldn't see the match. Sob 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 little tiger, you are such a good person. Waving handkerchief expression, said Wonton Seller. Moving heaven and earth. Setting off fireworks expression, said Brahmin. Looking at their excited praises, and Chaoyang curled his lips and couldn't help but criticize silently, I am the one who does good deeds without leaving my name. If Lu Qing didn't say in private that I was the most reliable one among the few here, I wouldn't have put in so much effort. Snap. He took a picture of the arena and posted it with a sentence. Lu Qing looks very relaxed while waiting. Snap. Snap. And Chaoyang found it interesting to post pictures again and again. Bako looks like he has a deep grudge. Lu Qing looks very relaxed. It feels like he is at a temple fair and not about to fight. As he was commenting, he suddenly paused for a while. After a while, he pressed the shutter and typed a sentence of more than 20 words. Lu Qing's moves are so smooth. His flame force is also beyond my expectations. In the picture, waves of fire were rolling and spreading outwards as if there was a real explosion. At this moment, not only did Bako lose most of his ability to use his evil arts, both of his arms were trembling and charred. Due to forcefully blocking the explosion of the terrifying flame force, he had suffered a certain amount of damage and showed obvious soreness. In his contracted pupils, he saw Lu Qing raising both of his hands and forming a seal. He was about to exhale and make a sound. Not good, Bako thought to himself. In a split second he made a decision. His body suddenly squatted down and avoided the cutting edge in front of him. Immediately after, he pressed both of his hands on the ground and straightened his back. His right leg swept out towards Lu Qing's ankle, forcing him to dodge and not be distracted to use the army formula. This was the Chinese Tiantang kick that incorporated the characteristics of Xinxiang's martial arts. If Lu Qing were to use this move instead of relying on force concentration, he would not be able to exert force with both hands. Although the strength of his legs would be ferocious, it would not be considered swift and fierce. However, Xinxiang's martial arts placed a lot of emphasis on kicking and thrusting techniques. The entire leg would be trained to the point where it was akin to metal. A ground kick could break an iron pillar, not to mention the fragile ankle. Amidst the loud noise, Bako predicted that Lu Qing would jump to avoid his sweeping leg. Both of his arms suddenly bent and straightened, causing his body to jump up strangely and pounce towards the enemy in midair. He smashed his elbows diagonally and pushed his knees upwards, attacking continuously with the force of breaking gold and shattering iron. In the dangerous situation, Bako fully displayed his strength and displayed the elegance of a country's boxing master, forcefully turning the tables around. But at this moment he saw Lu Qing jump up and down, but the seals he formed with his hands were not messed up in the slightest, and the solemn and dignified expression on his face did not change at all. He was completely calm and unruffled as if he was watching children play. T. As Bako's thoughts turned, he heard a low roar in his ears. Army. The ancient voice reverberated and Bako's mind buzzed. It was as if he was drowned by the aura of blood and evil from thousands of people, causing his evil arts to fail and causing a terrifying backlash. He could only feel numerous ferocious faces pulling at his feet with endless hatred, wanting to drag him down into the boundless hell. No. He kept screaming in his heart and tried his best to resist, but he could not break free from the feeling of fear. After Lu Qing succeeded in using the army formula as his body fell, his right arm dropped rapidly and his wrist hooked, releasing a ray of crystal-clear cold light towards the enemy in midair who was staring blankly in midair. The tight connection and the chain of moves, compared to before the battle with Vagar, was indeed a step up. The 26th move of the Ice Sect, Ice Burning, had been modified. On the other side, Bako saw that he was about to fall into hell. Suddenly he felt pain in his internal organs as if something was wriggling there, overturning the seas and rivers. Using this stimulation, he suddenly woke up and broke free from the influence of the army formula. At the crucial moment he used the body protection technique. However, just as Bako walked out of the fear of losing his courage, he saw a ball of cold light in front of him. With a smack, it stuck to his face, igniting a cold flame that burned quietly. Poof! Bako's head tilted back and his thoughts were almost interrupted. If it wasn't for his strong body he would have fainted. In the bone-piercing cold and stiffness, he wanted to roar but was slow and powerless. He knew that something was wrong and hurriedly unsealed the danger in his body the moment his feet touched the ground. Bam bam bam. His bones and tendons exploded in that instant. Something seemed to be wriggling and expanding in every muscle, breaking through the ice that covered his face. His body turned from thin to ridiculously strong and he was half a head taller than before. Bam! In the violent shaking of the arena, Bako stepped forward and threw a punch, creating a strong wind that could blow a child away. Good move. Lu Qing, who had already visualized and formed a hand gesture, pointed at himself and shouted in his heart. He wriggled his abdomen and pulled at his throat, fighting. In the deep and heavy voice that pierced through the clouds, Lu Qing's muscles were filled with blood. He suddenly pushed his feet inward, twisted his knees and spasmed his back. Bam! He also grew taller. In the shattering sound, he pulled back his right arm and threw a quick punch like an arrow, colliding head-on with Bako's fist that was covered in tattered charred bandages. Boom. This time, it wasn't a dull sound but a deafening explosion. Both of them shook at the same time. Bako, who was still suffering from the ice and damage, was slower by half a beat. He saw Lu Cheng retracting his chi, blood, spirit, force and rebounding force and gathering them at his lower abdomen, standing firmly on the ground. Bam! The Dan Chi in Lu Cheng's body gushed out like an erupting volcano. His left leg expanded and with a spring of his knee, he kicked out first towards Bako. At such a distance and with such speed of attack, Bako couldn't dodge in time. He forcefully stimulated his chi and blood and activated his body's potential. He followed up with a kick and braced his leg to block. Bam! With a dull sound, Bako, who had lost the initiative and was slightly inferior, bounced back with his leg. His body swayed forward and looked like he was about to fall. Lu Cheng jumped half a step. His left arm was covered in crystal-clear frost. He raised it up and clenched his right fist, punching out. The friction with the air at high speed ignited a layer of flames. Zhu Rong force, fiery fist. Boom. Bako didn't have a chance to counterattack. He could only lower his arm and cross his arms to block. He was embarrassed by the impact of the fist, the shockwave of the explosion and the rising flames. This wasn't the end. Lu Cheng lowered his left arm and grabbed onto Bako's shoulder, pulling him towards himself. He then used the force to turn his body sideways and raised his right arm, striking out with his elbow at lightning speed. Bam! Bako forcefully raised his arm to block but was bounced back and hit his chest. He felt stuffy and looked like he was about to vomit blood. Lu Cheng raised his leg again and accurately kicked the side of his opponent's knee without much strength. The kick made Bako, who was flustered, lose his center of gravity. Bam! Lu Cheng twisted his waist and his other leg followed closely behind the wheel. He straightened his leg like a battle axe, strong and tough. He sent Bako flying backwards in an instant. Taking a step forward, he didn't give Bako a chance to use his evil arts to struggle. He visualized the crystal-clear and dreamy ice spirit holy light in his mind. Amidst the rumbling of the thunderclouds, he straightened his back and punched upwards as though he was about to fly. Severe warning. Bam! Bako pressed his hands down and barely managed to block it. However, his vision suddenly turned black and he seemed to have lost his mind. Thump! He turned into a stone and fell heavily on the ground. He fell to the side of Lu Cheng, who retreated in time. His throat was pointed at the tip. The expression of the referee from Xinjiang changed slightly. He sighed to himself, raised his right hand and announced loudly, "Lu Cheng wins." Until now Bako, who had suffered multiple blows, had yet to recover from the freezing of his thoughts. Snap. And Xiaoyang recorded this scene and switched to the live post, thinking about what kind of commentary he should add. In the post, Eternal Nightfall Yan Shaoling was anxiously urging, And then? What happened after Lu Cheng's fire force exceeded expectations? Schrodinger's tiger, wake up quickly. They should have exchanged a few moves already. What's the situation now? Grabbing and shaking expression, Brahman said. And Xiaoyang was stunned for a moment. His hands quickly typed and sent out the picture. And then Lu Cheng won? After a short silence, the people in the forum expressed their feelings one after another. *CK. I really want to use the 3 consecutive strikes of quality. Is the other side made of paper? What happened to being close to the inhuman stage? My mom asked me why I was kneeling to look at the forum. I want to watch a comedy. And Xiaoyang thought seriously and explained, Bako didn't dare to use his evil arts on Lu Cheng and was caught off guard by his explosive fire force at the start of the match. He lost the medium to use other evil arts and his overall strength dropped a lot. He is no longer close to the inhuman stage. Unparalleled Dragon King sent an ellipsis and said, like I said, between the inhuman stage and the 6th pin stage, there should be an additional barrier named Lu Cheng. Road to the arena, added, I feel like the other side has no strength to fight back. You guys won't say that in a few days. And Xiaoyang resisted the urge to reply and said silently, in a few days Lu Cheng will most likely start to transform. P.S. Today is the 3rd time, please recommend it. Chapter 465. When the staff went up the stage and tried to carry Bako to the emergency room, he finally woke up from the long darkness. He felt his body shivering from the cold and saw Lu Cheng, who was waiting for the post-match greeting. Subconsciously, Bako's body shrunk back, and his ferocious facial features suddenly tightened. He immediately suppressed his sudden instinctive reaction and stood up, forcing himself to salute. This was the worst loss he had ever suffered against an opponent of the same level. It could be said that he didn't even have the strength to retaliate. He originally thought that he had already done his best at this level and was close to Waku and the rest. The other opponents could only rely on their exceptional performance or wait for their own mistakes to have a chance of winning. Lu Qing was strong, but he wouldn't be much better than them. Who knew that he was simply a monster that couldn't be measured using normal logic. If it was a real battle without a referee, that light kick from him to the side of his knee would have been enough to break his leg. Xingxiang's martial arts made one's legs and elbows as hard as metal. Before the root pulp mutated, it couldn't be compared to real steel. Under the situation where one couldn't use force to resist, even steel would be broken by Lu Cheng's kick within a certain limit, not to mention the side of a human's knee. Lu Cheng knew that Bako wasn't seriously injured, so he waited patiently. Seeing him stand up and salute, he didn't take another look and turned to walk towards the stone steps. Bako watched silently until his opponent was far away. Only then did he bear with the cold that had not completely dissipated and limped down the arena. At the Xingxiang representative's seat, the sixth-seated Gusai had stood up and walked to Waku's side. Looking towards the arena, he sighed deeply, so strong. If it were him, he would have to fight hard for a long time to win against Bako. If he wasn't careful, he might even lose. Gusai was also a monk, but he was fat like a mountain of meat. His skin was faintly glowing with a dark gold color, forming a stark contrast with the sallow and skinny Waku. Waku was also looking at the arena. His deep eyes reflected the silhouettes as he muttered to himself, and he's getting stronger with each match. In other words, he was getting stronger day by day, and it was visible to the naked eye. At the Miluo country's representative seat, the tall and sturdy Vagar had changed into a red general uniform. He was still wearing his big-brimmed hat and was sitting on the highest level, quietly watching the fight in the field. He was like a sculpture that displayed the beauty of strength. It was only during the process of Lu Cheng defeating Bako that his eyes under the shadow of the brim of his hat began to shine with a silver light. Over at the Japanese delegation, Kaori Karasawa gently bit her lower lip and nodded. Muko Yamashita stood at the front, neither swaying nor swaying, not saying a word. The day before yesterday, the team leader asked me if I had the confidence to win against Lu Cheng. I answered with certainty without any hesitation. I believed that even if he made a breakthrough, I wouldn't have any problems either. But now, after watching this battle, my heart actually started to waver a little. Of course, it was only a tiny bit. Southern Zheng's representative team was hidden in a secluded corner of the viewing platform. Banam was seated in a yoga pose with his eyes tightly shut, adjusting his state of mind. He wasn't paying attention to any of the matches. As for the battle within Chaoyang, he was not the least bit careless. A careless martial artist wouldn't survive long in Southern Zheng. Lu Qing walked back to his teammates, high-fived them one by one, and took back his phone from In Chaoyang. Unlocking the screen, he scrolled through the live stream post and secretly gave In Chaoyang a thumbs up. Well done. You're indeed the most reliable one among us. And Chaoyang replied with a smile. He was in a rather good mood, but he quickly collected his emotions and began to seriously prepare for the match with Banam. Lu Qing switched to the chat interface and reported the result to his leader at home. So, easy. I knew it. Yenjika replied immediately. Proud expression. At the same time, she looked down on Benu. That guy is so weak. It shouldn't have been more than a minute, right? No, it should have been more than 10 seconds, replied Lu Cheng. Didn't you say that he was stronger than that Sakata from Japan? Why did he lose so quickly instead? Sitting blankly expression, continued Yenjika. Is it because you improved after mastering the Emperor Yen diagram, or is it because his evil arts were countered by you and he panicked? You're done, how do you want me to answer? Snickering expression, replied Lu Cheng. I can only say, yes, Coach Yen is right. Seeing this reply, Yenjika, who had just left the dining table, laughed and turned her head. She was completely relaxed. Walking to the dressing table, she tied up her hair and put on the black-rimmed glasses that almost covered half of her face. Another happy day. Today's learning will also be filled with motivation. At this time, it was already 7 in the morning in America. Yenjika quickly packed her bag and said goodbye to Empress Dowager Ji Mingyu. She sat in the car of her full-time bodyguard Auntie Du and prepared to go to school. She had lessons at 8. Along the way, she quietly flipped through the teaching materials and books. Occasionally, she would chat with Lu Cheng, scroll through the live stream post and save the pictures of her Cheng. At 7:40, the car arrived at the school. Yenjika took her belongings, pushed open the door and left. When she was about to reach the teaching building, she met Huang Xiwen and 2 other seniors who were also from China. She nodded slightly as a greeting. Without stopping, she walked past them and entered the building under the bright sunlight. So arrogant and cold. Hearing the sigh of the seniors beside her, Huang Xiwen couldn't help but mutter, "I don't know what he's pretending to be." Lu Qing was a popular figure in Songqing University. Xianxia was known to her classmates even earlier than him. Huang Xiwen naturally knew that they were in a relationship. However, in her opinion, after the separation of two countries, no matter how strong the relationship was, it was only a matter of time before it faded and broke. Both parties couldn't bear the loneliness. Therefore, she felt that Xianxia and Lu Cheng's relationship was about to be declared dead. That was why she actively invited the other party to connect and raise her status in the eyes of her classmates. Lu Cheng is the heavenly son of China. There will definitely be many girls around him. Even if you stay together all the time, you may not be able to control him, let alone a foreign love. At first, he may be able to tolerate it, but as time goes by, he will find someone else. Which man wouldn't cheat under such circumstances? Let's see how you cry when the time comes. Huang Xiwen muttered in a low voice as if she was venting. She shook her head and laughed as she discussed other campus gossip with her senior sisters. Tap tap tap. Xianxia walked up 2 flights of stairs with light steps. She walked along the corridor that was bathed in sunlight and approached the classroom. At this moment, she suddenly heard the Caucasian male students beside her discussing something excitedly. That King of 4 Nations tournament was very, very exciting. You watched it too? Oh, that punch from before was so cool. One of the guys stepped out with his left leg and did a sliding punch pose. He was obviously a veteran fan of martial arts. This pose was very familiar to Xianxia, because this was how Lu Qing destroyed most of Bako's evil arts. It was also captured by Xiaoyang. The corner of her mouth curled up. She pursed her pink lips and her steps became lighter and lighter. In the Xinxiang Stadium, the heat waves filled the air. Not long after, the highlight match was about to begin. Waving to his teammates, Xiaoyang took out his phone, digital camera, earphones, wallet and other items and threw them to Lu Qing. Just as he turned around and was about to walk to the arena, he suddenly heard a shout from behind him. Xiaoyang. Ah. Xiaoyang turned around in confusion. He saw Lu Qing smiling and extending his right hand into a fist. It seemed like he wanted to give him a pre-match encouragement. At this moment, Xiaoyang felt like he was back in the Huahai University Martial Arts Club, back in the past 4 years when he participated in the district and national competitions. He laughed out loud, raised his fist and bumped it with Lu Qing's. Go for it. Lu Qing waved his fist vigorously. With him leading the way, Peng Liyun and Ren Li also came over. They bumped their fists with Xiaoyang and shouted, Go for it. Go for it. Xiaoyang shook his fist lightly as a sign of respect. He turned around again and strode forward. He seemed to have more determination and fighting spirit than before. Where the Japanese representatives were, Muko Yamashita turned his head and looked at a guy beside the leader. His hair was messy and he wore glasses. He was holding a laptop and typing on something crazily. How's the data collection going? Muko Yamashita lowered his voice and asked. The guy with messy hair pushed his glasses up and said, It's just starting to take shape. We're waiting for more competitions to perfect it. However, the most important genetic information has not been collected yet. We can't be compared to China. We have enough mighty ones to study. In this area we can only think of other ways. Samurais before and after the genetic mutation are the most valuable. China is not vigilant about this. Perhaps they don't think it's important enough to pay attention to. At this point, he paused and looked at Ichii Sakata, who was following the sound of the voice. With their genes, together with those of Vagar and Waku, we can take a huge step forward in our research. Ichii-kun, whether you can train the real Hadu, will depend on this. China doesn't pay much attention to this area of research. However, they are still very careful. We haven't gotten anything these few days. Their leader dealt with it very cleanly, Muko Yamashita said after a few seconds of silence. Xinxiang, Miluo and Nanjing, could it be that they are also collecting? The guy with messy hair curled his lips and answered, with their level of scientific research. He didn't finish his sentence, but his disdain was obvious. Chapter 466. After watching Xiaoyang walk towards the arena, Lu Qing and the rest were either in a daze, looking at their phones or studying the bathroom map. They were all waiting for the match to start and didn't talk to each other anymore. Why don't you guys say a few words? Didn't you guys discuss how you would have fought if you were in his place? What are your chances of winning? Leader Zhong Ningtao broke the silence with interest. Lu Qing looked at him and said with a smile, Those are all matches where we have a high chance of winning? For this kind of match, saying that and Xianxia will lose is a jinx, but believing that he can win is a disgrace. No matter what I say, it's better not to say it. Yeah. Renli nodded in agreement. Yeah, that's it. Peng Liyun returned from outer heavens. Lu Qing summed it up really well. As he walked towards the arena, and Xiaoyang took out a hairband from his pocket and tied up his half-length hair so that it wouldn't affect his battle. He walked up and stood on the left side of the referee. He adjusted his body and let the lake in his heart settle down gradually. There were no more ripples or waves, and thus it became deep and calm. It reflected his surroundings and connected with his thoughts, allowing him to analyze his opponent more quickly, accurately and clearly. The unique skill of the water sect, Lake and Mirror Wisdom. After reaching the physical invulnerability stage, it could still be upgraded. It was also called Lake and Mirror Wisdom, but there would be an additional prefix. The seventh style of the water sect. And Xiaoyang's eyes turned dark and rippled. And Xiaoyang's aura slowly spread outwards. Banam, who wasn't tall, had a body as hard as iron, and his hands and feet were wrapped in white bandages. When he saw his opponent, he couldn't help but feel like he was facing a vast ocean. It was boundless, deep and distant, gently rippling, containing and engulfing everything. This kind of aura spread and spread, causing the surroundings to become oppressive and dull. It made people anxious just like the scene before a storm. The storm is coming. Banam's Zahi boxing was a martial art developed from Nanjing's traditional martial arts, Chinese close combat martial arts, battlefield killing techniques and military assassination techniques. It had the style of the Dark Infinite Sutra, Dark Sect. Therefore, even though he had the secret skill to affect his opponent's spirit, he didn't like to fight head-on. He paused his steps, sometimes fast and sometimes slow. He was like a fish swimming in water, and strangely broke free from Xiaoyang's aura suppression and arrived at the predetermined position. He didn't seem to be affected. Only now did he seriously size up the enemy in front of him and compare it with the impression he had after reading the public information. He always had a sleepy face as if he would yawn at any moment. He was a very intelligent martial artist. The word, intelligent, did not describe his intelligence as a person, but rather his talent as a martial artist. It was said that he had his own ideas. Due to the isolation, language and many other obstacles, the information that Banam could find on and Xiaoyang was not complete. Hence, he became even more cautious as he had just advanced. Just as they were sizing each other up, the referee raised his right hand and swung it down. Begin. Banam pounced, but he didn't walk in a straight line. He made a beautiful arc and avoided his opponent's attack. Suddenly he arrived at his opponent's side. And Xiaoyang didn't move. Seeing that he couldn't lock onto his opponent, he stood at his original position and waited for Banam to close in. His biggest reliance was the lake and mirror mirrored, and this was limited by distance. Just as the shadow of his opponent appeared in his deep and dark heart lake, his vision suddenly turned black. It was as if all the lights in the stadium had been extinguished, and there was no moon or stars outside the dome. Not only that, the surroundings were so quiet that it made one's hair stand on end. There wasn't a single sound. If it were other martial artists, they would have panicked. But Xiaoyang was already mentally prepared. He didn't care about the darkness and the strange blindness and deafness. Following the undulations in the lake, he clenched his fist, swung his arm sideways and hit horizontally. Bam! From the tip of his fist to his forearm, he touched a cold flesh and blood object. He felt a vicious and sharp force. Amidst the sound of the collision, the darkness instantly shattered. And Xiaoyang saw light again and the sound rang in his ears again. The strange scene just now was Banam's inhuman ability, darkness. Bam! 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 Since Banam didn't succeed in his first move, he immediately switched to close-range fighting mode. After the punch, he immediately bent his elbow and smashed diagonally, or changed to a palm chop and poke, and then followed up with a kick and a knee strike. His crazy attacks were like a storm, and Xiaoyang didn't even have time to use force concentration. And Xiaoyang was completely suppressed in terms of strength and speed. During this process, the edges of Banam's palms, fingernails, and other places would occasionally flash with a dark light. Bam! 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 And Xiaoyang relied on the lake and mirror mirrored, and was always able to detect it a little in advance. With the advantage of internal movement and the defense characteristics of the water sect, he barely managed to hold on. It seemed like he was in a precarious situation, but in fact he wasn't defeated yet. As a boxing master with a distinct style, Banam didn't have the patience to slowly accumulate his advantages and win. When the battle was in its climax, he suddenly had a change in rhythm. It seemed like he was going to continue attacking, but in fact he was slower by half a beat. When Xiaoyang made a corresponding move, a ray of light flashed in his eyes, forming a strange color. Jiahi Quan, serene sting. Seeing this scene, Xiaoyang's heart tightened. He couldn't care about anything else and made a decision on the spot. He immediately withdrew his qi, blood, spirit and force. At the same time when Banam activated his secret technique, he gathered his Dan in his lower abdomen. The timing was just right, within a millimeter. If he didn't have the lake in mirrored and didn't have the daily practice, Xiaoyang definitely wouldn't be able to do something like this. It wouldn't work even if he was fast or slow. The ray of light flashed and immediately dimmed. Banam took half a step forward, swung his arm quickly and hurriedly threw a punch. He wanted to seize the opportunity when his opponent was affected by the serene sting. However, his serene sting was like hitting a dead person who had lost his flesh and blood. It didn't have much effect. When the Dan force exploded, Xiaoyang instantly regained his vigor. He took the opportunity to expand his arm and threw a right punch, blocking the enemy's attack in time. In the muffled bang, both parties shook. Banam, who didn't use his full strength, was at a disadvantage. Xiaoyang took the opportunity to borrow strength and continuously made Dan stage outbursts. With the force of flood, each wave stronger than the previous one, he changed from defense to offense. He continuously pressed forward and actually gained the upper hand. Double explosion, triple explosion, quadruple explosion, all the way to 9 consecutive explosions. He kept borrowing strength, and the more he fought, the more valiant he became. Every punch was heavier than the previous one, and every kick was fiercer than the previous one. He beat Banam until he was tired of defending and occasionally retreated. His veins and organs seemed to be drowning and gradually became obstructed. This made Banam feel that something was wrong. He felt that his attack just now was too rushed and had too many problems. It was not in line with his usual thinking, which led to the enemy to seize the opportunity. While defending, he suddenly thought of the oppressive and impatient aura of his opponent. He suddenly understood that he had unknowingly fallen into a trick and made a mistake. He was indeed a very smart martial artist. Bam! After another ferocious attack, Xiaoyang made a change in his rhythm. In his mind, he visualized a rolling torrent, a rising water surface, followed by a dam unable to withstand it, collapsing with a loud bang. Water sect, simplified physical invulnerability, flood. Xiaoyang's body became bigger and bigger. His feet cracked the ground. He didn't swing his fists but leaned sideways. Bam! Banam made the correct response and made a timely defense. However, his center of gravity was still affected and he staggered 2 steps back. Xiaoyang rushed forward immediately. His arms linked together and his legs rotated, making crazy consecutive explosions. Occasionally he would mix in other moves of the water sect, with the help of the simplified physical invulnerability, flood. He hit Banam until he was on the verge of death. Is he going to win? Zhong Ningtao wiped his swept-back hair and couldn't help but sigh. Can Xiaoyang really defeat an inhuman mighty one? Even if he had just broken through not long ago? After he spoke, Renli glanced at him, shook her head slightly and said softly, "No, he's going to lose." Ah? Zhong Ningtao didn't know if he should doubt his eyes or ears. Xiaoyang had clearly accumulated enough momentum to win. He looked at Lu Cheng and Peng Liyun. One of them was pursing his lips and the other was deep in thought. Both of them didn't look optimistic. In the midst of the fierce battle, Xiaoyang was about to use the last flood. Suddenly he realized that he was feeling weak. The flow of his strength was no longer smooth. As a result, his moves were half a beat slower. Banam broke free from the suppression and dodged to the side. This weakness didn't disappear quickly. Instead it got worse. Xiaoyang suddenly remembered that every time they fought, Banam's palms and fingernails shone with a dark light. He also thought of the killer move Dark Fragrance, that Renli used in the battle with Lu Cheng. Banam's darkness could weaken his opponent without anyone noticing until he was weak? I had been using force concentration previously and neutralized a lot of it. That's why I could hold on until now. Once he lost the initiative and lost his advantage, Xiaoyang couldn't turn the situation around. After being attacked by Banam twice in a row, he finally couldn't hold on and exposed his weakness. His vital points were blocked and in exchange he heard Banam wins. Phew, there is still a difference in strength. He sighed, bowed to Banam and turned to leave the arena. After returning to his original position, he didn't talk much about the battle just now with Lu Cheng and the rest. They just high-fived each other, expressing tacit understanding and encouragement in silence. After a while, Peng Liyun defeated his opponent quickly and ended the third round of double elimination. A total of 6 people left after 2 losses, leaving 17 contestants. Because if one more person was eliminated, they would enter the top 16, so there was no point in using a separate day to carry out the 4th round. If the eliminated person was determined in the first match, the audience would only be able to see one match when they arrived at the Xinxiang Stadium. Therefore, the organizing committee started the 4th round of double elimination matches in full swing. They would draw one pair to fight another and then draw a second pair after that. Before Lu Cheng and the rest were drawn, the 17th place of the King of Youth Pro League was decided in the first match. The 8th seed Li Shaokang was the top 16. The top 6 seeds, 4 wild cards and 6 contestants who passed the stage were born. At this stage there would be prize money. The top 16 would be 100,000, the top 8 would be 200,000, the 4th place would be 400,000, the 3rd place would be 500,000, the 2nd place would be 700,000 and the champion would be 1,500,000. Rest for the next 2 days. Don't go anywhere. After returning to the hotel, the leader, Zhong Ningtao, reminded them and took a look at Ren Li. Lu Qing nodded and had no objections. On his way to his room, he took out his phone and sent a message to Yan Zhika. Clenching fist expression. I'm going to stay up late tonight. I need to master Emperor Yan Force while the iron is hot. I need to start transforming in these 2 days. P.S. I've completed all my updates. Looking for recommendation votes and monthly votes in the middle of the night.